there must be more to life, rather than sitting driving a truck all day and all night, I picked up a book that somebody had gave me about 20 years earlier, as I say, Think and Grow Rich, and that's just when my mind just was blown. I just thought, you know what? Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve. And then obviously, as you know, businesses sometimes go stale. You hit that proverbial glass ceiling, and it's how do you break through that? So I used to go and drive the truck at night, double mans down to Nuneaton, back up the road, finish my shift, went to the fruit market, pick up the flowers that she'd ordered, back down the road, get a wash, get something to eat, get into my bed, and then I was in my bed for maybe 4 hours, and I was back up and I was delivering the bouquets and the way back out, So that made the business survive, because we diversified. It wasn't just transport, it was transport and then the flower side, So I had my 5-year goals, I wanted to exit my business for 50 million. Worked out the EBITDA and the multiples of the EBITDA that I needed to get to, so I was pretty focused. So I reverse engineered my goals. That gave me the steps to keep moving forward.
Yep. Hello and welcome back to the Built Different podcast with your host, Stephen Pettigrew. Today's guest is Philip Leach. Now, Philip is quite an interesting guest to have on the podcast because he's started businesses, he's also acquired businesses and had some lessons from those acquisitions. So we kind of geeked out a little bit on the process of buying the business through a leverage buyout, and he shares a lot of lessons into what went well but also what went wrong and what he's working on going forward in the future. So I hope you enjoy the episode. As always, guys, remember to hit subscribe wherever you're watching this podcast or listening to it, and let's get into the episode with Mr. Philip Leach. Phil, thank you very much for joining me today on the podcast. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks.
Good. So I wanted to get you on to the show today for a few reasons. Now we've never met before, but I've been following you closely on LinkedIn. I've seen some stuff that you've done in terms of acquisitions, mergers and acquisitions, which I'm always interested in. It's a topic close to my heart because I do a lot of it myself, and I think there's a lot of value that you can provide for that topic. But also you've started businesses on your own. You're doing some other cool stuff just now, which we'll come on to as well. But where I like to start, mate, is go back to the kind of start of your journey, maybe as a kid coming through school. And I'd quite like to ask and find out, what was that like for you? Was there any kind of entrepreneurial traits that you were showcasing even from that early age?
I wouldn't say it really happened at school, I wasn't really a sort of scholar in that sense. I always wanted to achieve, but I think as time goes on, life happens, you meet somebody, you have kids, the will to win sort of wanes away in people, and I found that happened to myself, so yeah. But obviously, maybe about 8 years ago, I picked up the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, and that's what sort of started me on this journey of what's possible. Know what I mean?
Opened your eyes a little bit to the world.
Yeah.
Good. So when you were coming through school then, so it sounds like you didn't start a business leaving school or anything, but did you go straight into a kind of employed role, or what kind of, how did your career begin?
Well, I left school at the age of 16. I got a job in Clydebank. I worked in the sort of the shipyards, so to speak. They built oil rigs and that in there. So I worked for UIE in the mail office. From there, I got an apprenticeship with a business doing surveying. The company ended up folding, right, and I was out of a job, so I went from there probably into the post office, became a part-time postman, so, and then for there, got my driver's license, became a courier, then my life's just been driving. I've been on the road most of that.
Aye, because you've always had a background in transport, haven't you?
Yeah.
I noticed that the businesses you were buying, and we'll come on to that later in the show, but they were transport businesses. And looking at your CV and stuff, you've had a lot of transport experience with Royal Mail and some of the big parcel delivery companies as well, is that right?
Yeah, I've worked with Yodel, CityLink when it was about, Parcel Force, FedEx, UK Mail, You know, I've worked with most of them as a courier, and then I joined as a self-employed courier through a company down south, and I ended up the manager. So when I took the job on, we had 8 runs, and it ran out of East Kilbride Depot, and it was HDNL at the time. It's now Yodel. I grew that from 8 drivers in that one depot. When they closed down and it became Yodel and Bells Hill, I went from 8 drivers to, I think, 38 drivers.
Wow.
You know.
Yeah, so the courier industry is an interesting one for me. I've had businesses in the past which have been involved in that space, and I know the trials and tribulations you can have with those companies, those staff members or drivers. They're almost a different breed sometimes, these courier drivers. I've got so many stories myself about them taking some drivers. We had some fantastic drivers, right, but a lot of them as well would take the piss. You know, yeah. I remember one sticking in my head. He was supposed to work out the Yodel depot for us on a Saturday, and he didn't turn up. Right, he wasn't there. So we phoning him, calling him, couldn't find him. Checked the tracker, and the guys at this point it was at Carlisle, but it eventually ended up in Wakefield with the van. Right, we were tracking him with the van, and it turns out he had an online girlfriend that was meeting down there. So yeah, that was interesting. Using our fuel, our van, whilst they were supposed to be working. That was quite a common thing to happen in that industry. They just have like their own.
Well, our drivers were all self-employed drivers, so we sourced the vans, we got them the fuel cards, but obviously get deducted from their earnings. You know, so they either had a drop rate or they had a parcel rate. You know, so really they could earn as much as they really wanted, or as little as they really wanted. You know, it was really up to them. So that was the sort of business model. As I says, we got up to 38 drivers. When I left the business, we had 106 drivers between the sort of west and the east coast of Scotland. You know, we had quite a lot through in Edinburgh as well, and working out of Livingston.
It's massive growth, that. What was it like being a manager? Because I often say to people, being a manager is one of the worst jobs you can have, because you do the most hours, you get all the grief. You get everyone's grief. Everyone comes to you with problems, and you get, relatively speaking, low pay, because when you actually factor in the amount of hours you're doing and try and work out your hourly rate, it's actually less than probably most people in the business. What was it like being a manager?
Oh, I suppose you could probably ask some of my friends. They hated me as a manager, but they loved me as a person. You know, business is business. You know, at the end of the day, we know what we were there for. You know, and it's a matter of just getting everybody working. But I was actually blessed with, when we were recruiting, I got some really, really good drivers, and they took the pressure off us, you know. So I was out, being a courier myself, I was out and I was teaching people, you know, this is what you do, this is what the job entails, line it up, get it all scanned onto your van, get out. I mean, you were going into streets, you were looking at the neighbours to see if their televisions were on, whether the gas flues had the smoke coming out, you know.
So these little telltale signs to make sure they're in.
Yeah, telltale signs for the neighbours, you know, because if the customer wasn't in, you knew where you were going next. So it saved you a bit of time, you know. So I was actually quite lucky that some of the drivers that I took on were exceptional. You know,
if you get that good core, it helps, doesn't it? And you can kind of build out from there. We were always the same. We always had like a good 80-90% good people. It was that periphery that was quite difficult to nail down. They were kind of coming in and out of jobs, going from one company to the next, all that sort of stuff. I suppose that's the same in most industries, but transport, I suppose, having been involved in different industries, it's definitely got a bad rep about it. And that part of the transport industry, the courier side of it, because they're self-employed, is very transient. You know, a lot of people come and go. It's almost used as like if someone gets paid off from a steady job, they go and jump into it because it's quite easy work, in the sense that if you've got a driver's license, you can jump in the van. But when people start that for the first time, they realise this is actually quite tough, because I've got to work, especially, I'm guessing when you started, there wasn't sat navs, or there wasn't as much technology as there is today.
No, well, when I started doing the courier side of things, as I say, that was 29 years ago now. So as I said, it was all map reading. You read your map book, you worked out your route, and you put your parcels in the order of that route, and then obviously scanning them, loading them onto the van. But yeah, as time went on, things changed. You know, courier companies were saying, oh, but you need to scan it in order you're going to deliver it in, because we're going to send out a text message to say you're going to be there within that hour.
Yeah.
You know, which enhances the customer experience, don't get me wrong, but the downside of it is the sat-navs don't really work out the traffic jams, the time of day in which you get into certain areas, the road closures,
Totally.
you know, so yeah, things can derail very, very quickly, you know, but yeah, as I says, I was blessed to have fantastic drivers working for me. In fact, two of the best drivers I had, Tracy and Deborah, both females.
That's a good point to make, actually. When I think back to all the businesses I've been involved in with transport, that's been the foundation of the business. A lot of the females are the best because they take attention to detail. They look after the van. Most of the ladies that we had, the inside of the cab was spotless. The van was organised. When they're delivering something, it was all organised. It was washed regularly.
Yeah.
All these things. So I suppose the crux of that story is guys are horrible and smelly and shouldn't be using these vans. So that's kind of your early years then. And I think from looking at your profile and stuff, you've been doing those type of operations managers jobs, transport managers jobs for a wee while.
Yeah.
You mentioned a book that's kind of sparked your interest to get into entrepreneurship, because that's what age were you when you started to think about jumping into being a business owner yourself?
Well, I'd always thought about it when I was sort of early 20s. You know, I was sitting there and you always see the news reports, oh, this company's bought this company, and you're sitting there going, oh, that sounds really good, but with my credit rating, you know, you'd be lucky if the bank would give me an overdraft, let alone a loan, you know. So it sort of dwindled away for there, but as I says, working and growing somebody else's business, you know, as I says, I've had the opportunity to work for some fantastic managers, some fantastic depot managers. In fact, some of them to this day I still keep in contact. Yep. So much so that I had two of them work for me after me working for them. As I says, we had a guy who headed up Amazon France, setting up the whole home delivery system over there, Scott. He came to work for me. Chris, you know, wee Chris, he always made me laugh, you know. It didn't matter how agitated or angry I maybe was with him. Within 2 minutes he'd been in his office, I was rolling about the floor laughing because it was just his demeanour. His manner, his demeanour, you know. You could never stay angry at him.
Even if you'd done something wrong.
No, definitely not. But as I says, you're right. In the courier industry, you know, especially coming up to peak period, Christmas period, you know, I was getting phone calls at like 2 a.m, and you failed service for yesterday, and you know, but
it's relentless. I've been there in quite a few peak periods, and you know, when I was starting my businesses in that industry, I was out delivering parcels at 10 o'clock at night and Christmas Eve and stuff, just to make sure that all the presents were delivered. And it is relentless. There's always another parcel to deliver, and especially at that time of year, 7 days a week, which we probably shouldn't be saying, but you know, a lot of people do work 7 days a week during that time. So it is relentless. Yeah,
as I say, it's very hard in the courier industry because you can't really hire people for the weekend work, because the people that work through the week, they lease the van.
Yep.
You know, we lease it as a business and then we lease it back to them. You know, so it's their van. You can't really take it off them, because if there's any damage, who's going to pay for the damage? Is it going to be the weekend drivers, or is it going to be the guy whose name's against it, or the female whose name's against it?
And then they're pointing fingers anyway, aren't they? Yep. You've got to be able to prove every day that this is what this van went out with, this is what it came back with, and that's very hard to monitor, especially over a full year. So, no, that's interesting. So, it's most people in the start business, they tend to do it quite young, but you've started a wee bit later in life. And What's prevented you? Was it just a lack of confidence? Was it a lack of the right idea? What prevented you early on?
No, I sort of starting businesses in the sort of mid-30s, you know. It wasn't until obviously I got to the age of 40 and I'm sitting there going, what there must be more to life, you know, rather than sitting driving a truck all day and all night, you know. So it got to the stage where I got a wee bit fed up of the mundane, you know, everyday life.
9 to 5.
Yeah.
I know it's not 9 to 5 in the career space, but you know what I mean. Just that repetitive.
So it was for me. It was getting mundane. I picked up a book that somebody had gave me about 20 years earlier. As I say, Think and Grow Rich, and that's just when my mind just was blown. I just thought, you know what? Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve. So then I looked into how to buy businesses, you know, and that's when I came across the fact that you don't need a bank, you know, which I was pretty glad for, you know.
Yep. Yeah, one of the books that got me into entrepreneurship, it wasn't Think and Grow Rich. That's actually one I need to, believe it or not, I still need to read, but it was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. That was the first business book I read, and I was like, wow, there is a lot more to life, you know, in terms of making wealth for yourself, more time, more freedom. And it actually isn't that far away. You know, it's within your reach. If something's possible, if someone else has done it, it's possible. Yeah. And that was the thing that triggered me to start businesses and then look into the acquisition stuff as well. Rich Dad, Poor Dad didn't teach you about necessarily mergers and acquisitions, but it led me down that path eventually. So, okay, so you've started businesses in your kind of mid-30s. Now, was it starting businesses or was it acquiring businesses at that stage? What was
No, I'd started businesses. Yeah.
So that's founding businesses, and that's interesting, right? Because some people that come into our space, the M&A space, they haven't actually started a business, and I see this problem quite a lot where it's maybe a manager or a consultant. They haven't started a business to feel that what it's actually like to start a business, all the pain points, all the growing pains you have, and then they buy something that's already established, parachute themselves into this, you know, living beast that's got all sorts of manner of problems every day, and they don't know what to do with it, and eventually actually fails because they don't have that raw experience. So what type of businesses were you starting back then, and what was the kind of lessons you learned when you were starting those businesses?
Well, again, it was in transport, and then obviously, as you know, businesses sometimes go stale. You hit that proverbial glass ceiling, and it's how do you break through that? So, as I say, my now sort of ex-wife, she was a florist to trade back in the Philippines. Right. So I turned around and I says to her, well, why don't you do that? You know, as a wee part-time job, you know. So I used to go and drive the truck at night, you know, double manned down to Nuneaton, back up the road, finish my shift, go into the fruit market, pick up the flowers that she'd ordered, back down the road, get a wash, get something to eat, get into my bed, and then I was in my bed for maybe 4 hours, and I was back up and I was delivering the bouquets and the way back out, you know. So that made the business survive, you know, because we diversified. You know, it wasn't just transport, it was transport and then the flower side, you know. So, and then obviously, when you buy something that's 7 million turnover business, you know, that takes up all your time. So, as I says, with ex-wife leaving, that sort of curtailed that business. So I focused more on the transport side. Good.
Yeah, I think most people, when they start, and I've been guilty of this, you think starting a business is easy, but it's actually not. You know, it's easy to start a business. Yeah. It's actually very easy. You can set one up for 30 quid on company's house and away you go, but actually setting the thing up to be successful, getting customers, managing your cash flow, putting systems in place, managing staff, these are all things that you need to learn the hard way. You can't really bypass that.
Yep. Well, as I say, that's where I'm at now, you know, because I've got a good friend, Charlie, and we sat down after the collapse of my business earlier on this year, and we thought, what's next? You know, how can we create value for people? you know. And the two of us have both started businesses, and we've both been successful at it. We've failed a couple of times as well, you know. It's
part of it.
It's the government statistics tells you, you know, 5% fall in the first year, but I actually think it's more than that, because you don't really need to file your accounts for 18 months,
Yep.
you know, and then by the end of 5 years, 95% of the businesses that started up, they're
Drop
all
off.
away.
Yep.
You know, so you've only got 5% left. So Charlie and I sat and had a discussion. You know, we've been on many different courses. We've been on John Assaraf's course, John Lee's, Paul O'Mahony's, Grant Cardone's, Industry Rockstar, Success Resources. You know, so we've done that a lot together. So we just looked at everybody else's business model and thought, how can we create something that will create value for people? And as you says, it's daunting trying to start a business. Where do you start? You know, where do you get funding? You know, how do you get seen? So after we looked at that, we thought, you know what? Why don't we build a digital education platform for them where they can go and find out everything from e-commerce, business intelligence, entrepreneurship, social media, and marketing. You know, so
you're bringing that all in-house in the one platform.
Yeah.
Is that what you're working on just now? Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Let's come back to that later.
Right, okay.
I'll give you plenty of time to talk about that. Don't worry.
Right, okay.
Going back to the M&A stuff, right? What was it that interested you about getting involved in that space in the first place?
Well, my parents actually gave me some of my inheritance early, you know. So they gave me over 40 grand, and they said, don't be spending that at the bookies, you know. That was maybe what I'd have done yesteryear, you know. Had a wee punt and probably lost it all, you know. So I decided to invest in myself, and I came across Jonathan J, which I'd been following for a while. You know, there was 3 of them. There's Jeremy Harbour, there's Roland Frazier, the Epic Challenge, and then there's Jonathan J, the Dealmakers. And I just thought, rather than me sitting here frittering the money away week by week, I'm going to invest in myself. So I invested in the course with Jonathan J, a 2-year course, and obviously travel expenses, hotels, because it's no cheap when you go to London, you know. And I learned the process, you know, and I just followed the process, you know. It's a very simple process once you know what you're doing, you know.
It's just another sales tactic, isn't it, really, to buy a business? It's another sales pipeline, funnel, whatever you call it.
It's marketing, isn't it? It's marketing. You've got to be consistent.
Mm-hmm.
It's with anything in life, you know. If you want to be good at something, just be consistent, you know. Take action, be consistent.
Totally.
You know.
A lot of people go to these courses, and again, I've been on them as well, and they send a batch of 100 letters one time, and they think they're going to get some deals out of that.
Yeah.
It doesn't work like that. I mean, you might get lucky, but sending one batch of letters once is not going to get you deals or deal flow.
No.
There's so many other ways to do it in marketing. There's so many funnels you can use, and you know, both you and I have done that in the past. So, okay, going back to that time, then you obviously done that course. You got some tools, strategies, insights into how it all works. What did you do next, and what kind of did you specifically target? Transport? Was it any sector? What did you kind of look for?
No, it was transport. So obviously I bought the data for the transport businesses. And the first batch of letters I sent 1,408 letters. Second batch was 1,293. Only ever sent 2 letters out, and my name got out there, you know.
Good.
So
you're actually an exception to the rule then, where you actually only done a couple of batches and you actually got some deals out of it.
Yeah.
Good. You've just totally poo-pooed my theory there.
Well, I had 7 heads of terms signed, you know, but
fantastic.
We only completed in 1. As I says, being in the M&A space, you'll understand that when you start doing due diligence and you start pulling things up, things became not worth it, you know. So as much as I hate to have wasted the sellers' times, but the businesses that they were offering weren't what I thought they were, you know. And there was loads of different challenges, you know.
Do you know, it's a really psychologically, it's a really interesting dynamic when you have these conversations with business owners, because they're trying to sell the business, right? They're trying to present it in such a way that's good, looks good on the eye. It's all singing, all dancing. Now, any business that you look at has got problems. Every single business has got its problems. That business owner's trying to, they're in that side of the table. They're trying to protect what they've got. They're trying to show the best face of it. And a lot of times it comes out in the due diligence, but there's only so much due diligence you can do. There was one business I bought in 2021 where it was a very, very light touch due diligence process, whereby the deal was a low amount to buy a £2 million business, but it was a low amount. But when you go into the actual thing, you start finding out that this creditor's not being paid, HMRC's not being paid, there's people chasing you for money you weren't aware of. You don't understand this stuff.
The skeletons come out of the closet.
Aye. And you can only do so much due diligence, can't you? So those 7 or 8 deals that you had as heads of terms, what was it about the one that you got signed in? What was it about that one that interested you?
Well, when we did the due diligence, everything checked out, it was as advertised, as they say, everything lined up in a row, there was no issues. With the other ones, as I says, we were buying a sole trader business, and that came with the challenges. We'd made the offer for asset value, and when the owner spoke to his accountant, the accountant turned around and says, you're on a balancing charge for your assets because you've already had the benefits up front, so you're going to have to pay this. So then that was actually through a broker. So then the broker came back to me and says, can we change the value of the assets and put the goodwill up? But that didn't really work for us because that increased our corporation tax liability, and at the time it was going up to 25%. So it didn't work for us, because that would have left us with a 150 grand corporation tax bill straight off the bat, as well as try to fund the acquisition before we even thought about getting in and looking how to integrate it and grow it.
Yep.
So other ones, different challenges. They wanted to demerge the land and buildings and everything else,
Just became complex with some of those.
It just became far too complex, There was another one where the owner actually depreciated the value of the vehicles at like 5% per year. Now, trucks don't last 20 years,
Nope.
So he's sitting there telling me that the truck's worth 100 grand when in reality, market value is probably about 15, 20 grand, So how can you possibly borrow against something like that, So yeah, there's a multitude of things that can go wrong in the M&A space, and as I say, it was a costly exercise, I think maybe on the 7 deals we probably spent about 140, 150 grand in legals and accountancy due diligences just to pull out and fail it. Just
to put it through the sausage factory.
Yeah.
Aye, it's a lot of expense. I think, again, when people go to these courses, this type of stuff, M&A is becoming a bit glamorised now, in my opinion. A lot of people are pretending to do deals, pretending that it's the best thing in the world, but in reality, when you look behind the curtain, it's a bit of a mess. I mean, there's deals can go wrong. We've all had deals that go wrong. I've had them. My business partners have had them. But I speak for myself here. We come from a place of transparency and honesty. We tell people the deals that go well also, but there's also deals that go badly. When these people are, and I'm making a bit of a generalisation here, but when people are pushing courses and saying it's the easiest thing in the world to make money and it's a get-rich-quick scheme, it's absolutely not. Is that your experience of it as well?
Well, the course that I joined, easy wasn't the way it was sold. It was, if you put in the hard work and you put in the effort, this is what can be achieved, and the fastest way to wealth is by acquisition, because if you can buy 3-4 businesses and you can integrate them, share all the customer bases, the economy of scale, grow it for maybe 2-3 years, then you can look to exit and pass it on to like hedge funds or venture capitalists, you know. And that was the sort of goal for me, you know. So I had my 5-year goals, you know. I wanted to exit my business for 50 million. Worked out the EBITDA and the multiples of the EBITDA that I needed to get to. So I was pretty focused. So I reverse engineered my goals. That gave me the steps to keep moving forward.
Yep.
You know.
Good. So one of the things I'm quite vocal about on social, which gets me in trouble sometimes, is brokers. And everybody's got their own experience in them, right? And I'm piecing together, you might have had good experiences with them, right? But I've heard so many bad stories, and I've had so many bad experiences with brokers as well. What's your take on brokers when it comes to finding businesses and their role in the whole transaction? And you can be as honest as you like, mate. They're not going to send you any letters.
Brutal honesty. If a business owner's looking to sell a business, don't go near a broker. You know, because I had one broker, I sent over a heads of terms document for the client to sign. I ran it past them. The broker then started sending me emails back. Oh, I want this taken out and I want that taken out and put this in and put that out. I says, wait a minute here. You never told me you had a law degree, you know? And he says, I don't. I says, well, my lawyer's drafted this, you know? I don't have a law degree, you know, I rely on other people. I says, but you can't be the broker, the lawyer, the accountant and the finance broker at the same time, you know. So your clients gave you a job to do to facilitate the sale of his business. I'm trying to make an offer and all you do is keep butting in. So I actually spoke to the vendor, the seller, and I says to him, I says, look, I totally get it. I says, you've spent a lot of money, you've hired these people, and if I'd have spent that kind of money, I'd have been riding them like a Blackpool donkey in high season, you know. And he burst out laughing because he got where I was coming from, you know, because he was looking to sell up because him and his family were looking to move abroad, you know, and take it easy, you know. And obviously he's seen the emails going backwards and forwards. He says, oh, I've seen them. He says, I'll have a word, you know. Unfortunately, the deal didn't go through, you know, but as I says, you take the chance, you know, you can only do so much due diligence at the front end before you actually give it to the professionals, and it's the professionals that pull everything apart and look under the carpet and see what's there, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah, and listen, there's obviously some good brokers out there, of course there is. There's good and bad in every industry, but having been involved in loads of different sectors and stuff, the business brokerage sector is really murky because I've got a few quick examples. So there's a transport company I was chatting to that was online with this broker for 4 years, hadn't received a single offer.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is this broker had told this guy, a transport company as well, based on just off the M74, and it gave him this wild valuation of 2 million quid as the valuation for the business. Now, the profit for this business was like 100 grand, right? Yeah. Now, there's a reason why he didn't get any offers, right? Because that valuation is absolutely insane. Yeah. But because the broker had given him this valuation, and it's coming from someone who's apparently an authority, the owner can't climb down from that valuation, and it's stuck in his brain that that's what my business is worth, so that's what I'm waiting for. Yeah. Other examples of that is, and by the way, these guys charge hefty fees, don't they? Like,
business brokers are only marketers.
Exactly.
You know, give me 20 grand, I'll do you a flyer up, we'll get it up on the website and we'll get your business
Sell
sold.
the dream, don't they?
And then we'll take a commission on the sale. They're not interested in the commission on the sale. They're interested in the 20, 30, 40, 50 grand that they take up front, and that's it.
Or the monthly retainer that's like I've seen guys sign up to 3-4 year contracts, which is mind blowing, isn't it?
Yeah, but people don't know.
Aye, they don't know
because if you want to buy a house, you go to an estate agent.
Yeah,
know what I mean? People think that business brokers are there to sell their business. They're marketing companies. You know, I could start one tomorrow if I wanted. Know what I mean? And start putting the name out. Look, I'll sell your business. I've been in the M&A space for long enough. It's not something that I'm thinking of doing.
Yep.
I might in the future, but if I was to do it, I would take a smaller fee up front and I would take a larger commission on the sale, because then if it's no me that's selling it and I've hired people in, it incentivises these people to go out, sell the business to somebody else, know what I mean, and market it properly, you know. Whereas a lot of these brokerages, you're getting people that are just out of university, you know.
I was just going to make that point,
you get them out of university, you know, they've got no life experience, you know, they're told by
never
their
been
boss,
in a business.
never been in a business, they've been told by their boss, right, we've got this to sell, you know, see what you can do, you know, follow up in emails, anybody that comes in, you know. But as I says, me personally, if I was a business broker, I would do it right. Not many of them do it right, because they're more or less just off the marketing fee up front. And once they get that, they're not interested in anything else.
Somebody I was working with in the past who's done loads of leverage buyouts and stuff, they haven't all worked out, but he's done loads and loads of deals. He got to know the biggest brokerage firm, we won't name them, right, but the biggest brokerage firm in the UK. They turn over hundreds of millions of pounds. And the contact I've got, he was going to like a dinner party with this guy, other people there as well, obviously. And this guy was boasting that they're not a business sale brokerage, they're just a retainer business. That the vast majority of that income, that revenue stream, was from retainers. It wasn't from selling businesses. And it's mind-blowing. Another stat is that I think every year 50,000 businesses are listed for sale online and less than 1,000 actually sell. It is crazy.
I think you'll probably find it's
maybe
probably
less.
about 500
Aye,
out
maybe
of
less.
that, you know. It's like 0.5% of what's out there actually sell.
Yeah.
You know, and all these people are sitting there going, I've spent all that money, I've put it all up for sale and nobody's looking at it. But too many people have had their fingers burnt for some of these brokerages, and, you know.
And that's why people like us, who I would class us as sophisticated buyers, because we're real buyers, we've actually bought businesses, we tend to avoid brokers. Well, I do. We tend to look for off-market opportunities. And I'm guessing that's what you would tend to do as well.
Yeah. As I say, don't get me wrong, as I say, I've had a few brokers approach me, or you've sent a letter to my client, can we have a discussion, you know, and then they're asking you all these silly questions like, prove your money, you know.
It shows where the money's come from. It's ridiculous. Yeah.
So if I was James Cann and I phoned up and I was interested in an agency, a recruitment agency, would they be asking me to prove my funds? No.
Totally. In small businesses, one of my mentors, Jeremy Harbour, he always says this, that all small businesses are a bit shit because they're only one client or one key staff member away from going bust. Yeah. Like, below a certain level of revenue and profit, they're all, I mean, there's big companies right now that are going bust, and they are big companies, but they're not doing the basics like tracking cash and all that sort of stuff. But when it comes to acquisitions, for small businesses, I agree with you, less than 5-6 million of revenue and a certain level of profit, you should be very careful about engaging with a broker. They do come in handy when you've got a certain size of business, because there is a lot of moving parts and stuff, but below a certain level, it's not worth your time or money. There's other ways of engaging with buyers like us, and a sophisticated buyer like us is more likely to do the deal with you, because a broker or even an accountant can be, or a legal person for the seller can be quite obstructive when it comes to the sale. They actually slow the whole thing down or stop it from happening. Yeah.
Well, as I say, it's 10 of the ones that I actually signed heads of terms with. This is the way, this is the process, this is how we do it. You know, you keep on top of your team, I keep on top of my team, we keep in contact, you know, and we drive this forward, you know, because lawyers have got 100, 200 clients, you know, it's he who shouts loudest gets dealt with. Same with the finance brokers, the same with the accountants, you know. They don't just drop the phone because Philip Leach phones, you know what I mean? So it's keeping on to them. So desire plus persistence equals success in my book, you know. You've got to desire it enough, you've got to be persistent, you've got to chase it, you know. Because if you don't chase it, everybody just drops that ball.
Totally.
You know, oh, he's no shouted for a week, just leave him. Know what I mean? But this guy, he's shouting, so I better get on the phone to him, or I better ping him an email and keep him up to speed, you know. And that's just the way life is, you know, especially in the M&A space.
Totally, yeah. Okay, so let's go back to the deal that you were referencing earlier, that was an LBO deal, yeah?
Yes.
So for anyone that doesn't know what that is, it's a leveraged buyout, and it's where you would borrow against the assets of the business you're going to buy. So talk to me a wee bit about that. You mentioned it was a £7 million business, Phil, so how was that process? Was it tricky? How quickly did you get that over the line, etc.?
Well, the first letter that I sent out was just before Christmas. The second version of the letter that I sent out was January. And I completed on the deal on the 25th of May. You know,
quite a quick process then to get all the funding secured and everything. Yeah, good.
So I had a good funding finance broker that put me on to a good funder. As I say, after the business collapsed, you know, your head goes a wee bit. You've got all the stress and all the pressure, you know, from subcontractors, suppliers, from ex-staff members, you know. And on my birthday, I got a message out of the blue from the guy who authorised me to get like 800 grand,
yep.
You know, and that meant the world to me, you know, because I was sitting there and I was sort of down in the dumps, you know, I felt like a failure, you know, and unless you've actually experienced something like that, you don't understand the sort of mental torture that you go through. So I'm actually quite lucky in the fact that not only have I got a fantastic network round about me, you know, I'm truly grateful to them all, you know, Mima, Lindsay, Charlie, Harry, Gavin, you know, they all sort of, they kept my spirits up, you know, they kept in contact, whereas a lot of people, when that happens, you know,
they're quite happy almost.
They're your pals when you've got something, or you've got money, or you've got something that they want from you, but see the minute you lose it, they're like, they disappear, you know. So I suppose that you work out how your friends are when you're...
Times are difficult.
When times are difficult, you know, and they pulled me through, you know, them as well as my daughter, you know.
Yeah.
But a quote from my daughter, I turned around and I says to her one night, I says, right, go and get your shoes on, get your jacket on, we're going out. You're not the boss of me. I says, I'm your boss. She says, you're not even the boss at JJ&S anymore. And I thought, wow.
How old is she? She's only young as well, isn't she?
She's only 8.
Oh, wow.
She's not even 9 yet. Know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that cut straight to the bone, you know. There's no grey areas with children, you know, it's black or white, you know.
Yep.
But in her head, I wasn't the boss at JJ&S, so I can't be her boss. You know, and I turn around and I say, no, I'm your dad and I'll be your boss until you're 25. Yep. So no boyfriends until you're 30, you know. Yep. She's like, no, I'm having a boyfriend. And I'm like, no, you're not, you know. But
I'm lucky I've got 2 boys, I'm all right.
Well, as I says, my daughter's an achiever, you know.
I seen that on LinkedIn today, mate. Yeah, you must be proud. Yep.
Oh, super proud, as I says. The sort of marriage breakup, it must be hard for any children, and a lot of them, their heads go down, you know, their schoolwork suffers, you know, and everything else, you know. But when my daughter stayed with me, she's actually achieving everything at school, you know. She came in the other week and she says to me, she says, Dad, I'm the fastest in my class. She says, fastest girl in your class, well done. She looked at, if looks could kill, I was dead and you would be at my funeral today, you know what I mean? It was a look of disdain. She says, no, I beat the boys as well, you know?
Brilliant.
So, yeah, as I says, she got a medal the other night. It was actually for participation, you know, because she hadn't been for 10 weeks because I'm still trying to get round getting into university and trying to manage my time correctly. So I had to go to the karate club with her. And when she went in and she found out it was a competition, she's going, no, not doing it. So I had to make a fool of myself in my jeans, in my brogues, and actually show the moves because I trained at the same club for maybe about 18 years. I gave it up about 15 years ago because obviously work commitments and everything else. So I showed her So she took part, and that's why she got the medal, right? But before we left there, she says, Dad, can I go over and have a look at these medals? I says, of course you can. So I walked over with her, and there was the bronze, the silver, and the gold, right? So she's seen them. And then walking out the door, she's like, when are you buying my trophy cabinet? You know? So already she's got it in her head that come Monday night, there's another competition. So that was kata, which is all you're practicing your moves, you know, your blocks, your kicks, your punches and stuff. But on Monday night, there's actually the sparring. So she's got it in her head that she's going to get one of these medals on Monday
she's decided.
night. Yeah, she's decided. And the thing is, I like that because I'm no motivating her. She's motivating herself.
Yep.
You know, as I says,
it's key to foster that, isn't it? The kids.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, as I says, after she's been in Marbella with me at a Dealmakers retreat.
Nice.
For 5 days. I've had her in London at the Dealmakers as well. I've had her in London at Success Resources. She's met Mirella Sully, who's the woman that started Global Women magazine.
Right.
She's met Veronica Tan, whose husband, the pair of them own Success Resources, you know. She's met Robert G. Allen. See,
getting exposure to that at that young age, that's gold dust for a kid. Like being around successful people and people that want to achieve something.
Yeah.
That's gold dust, isn't it?
Well, she's had her picture taken with Robert G. Allen. The guy's worth $1.4 billion. Know what I mean? A billionaire.
Yep.
How often do you get to rub shoulders with these types of people?
Especially as a kid. No, definitely.
Yeah.
No, that's why we do all these things, isn't it? It's for the kids ultimately. It's to build something for your family. Going back to the business, right? Because you went from buying it to exiting it pretty quick. How did it get to the point where the business started to struggle, and was it sudden? What was the lessons you could pick out from that?
The lessons, there's a multitude of lessons in that. Obviously, we bought the business in May 22. About 2 months after that, the fuel prices jumped up by 50 pence a litre. So when you're buying 30,000 litres a week, you know, it's an extra 15,000 on your fuel bill. Then after the sort of fuel prices came down, the energy prices skyrocketed, causing the cost of living crisis. So then we were faced with staff walking out on us if we didn't give them a pay rise. So we gave them a small pay rise. Then, as I says, with the finance that we'd taken out, you know, it was the Bank of England base rate crippled us, you know.
Yep.
So when we bought the business, initially we were paying something like 3%, right? So 3% on £1 million is 30 grand. When the business collapsed, the Bank of England base rate was 5.25. So we were more or less paying 8%. So it was 80 grand every million, you know. And as I says, it just sucked the life right out of the business. You know, I brought in a part-time finance director from a third party. I'm not going to name them. And they were absolutely hopeless, you know. All they did was they kicked the can further down the line, you know. So we sold the rest of the assets that we actually owned outright, just to keep us afloat. But there was no money getting saved, you know.
Yeah.
They weren't analysing the business properly and coming up with a proper plan and saying,
I'm guessing they got paid though.
Yeah, these people always get paid first, don't they? But as I says, if I was to do it again, never again. Never hire in a third party on a part-time basis, you know. If you're going to hire somebody and bring them in full-time, you know, I must have put about £40,000 in their pocket over the space of 6 months.
And they, to be again, I don't know the whole situation, but they probably seen that when they came in and thought, well, I'm just going to milk this for as long as I possibly can.
Well, I would say so. As I say, I can't say for definite, you know, but in my eyes, that's just the sort of way I saw it, you know, because we weren't getting out of debt, we weren't saving any money, and the business was still sucking the life out of us. So, as I says, I sacked them September last year, and obviously I tried my best to turn things around, you know, increase sales and try and take on more work and everything else. But as I says, where we were positioned down in Wiltshire, it wasn't always easy because you had so many companies round about us that were all in the same space as us, the bulk haulage, you know.
And transport's got low margins to begin with, generally speaking, and it's got this reputation and it's right in a lot of ways that it's a race to the bottom. A lot of people will just take work just for the sake of it, just to get something on the back of their lorry.
Well, I found that, you know, so competitors were taking on jobs for very little money just to get their truck from where they were dropping off over towards where they could pick up again, you know. So just to try and cover the fuel costs and no cover the wages of that, because they knew that they would get the money that way, you know. So yeah, as I say, it is a race to the bottom, you know, because everybody was struggling for the work, everybody was fighting for the work, and they were willing to undercut one another. Yeah,
it's a bit nasty, that in the transport industry. I've seen that a lot as well, and it wasn't just that. I mean, that from my experience, likes of vehicle prices increased massively, insurance costs. Yeah. Insurance costs have went up for most types of businesses, actually. Yeah. Everything in this cost of living crisis went up, and when you've already leveraged it, it can be tricky. If you were to do another LBO again, or any type of deal structure, what would you do differently this time?
Well, as I say, is the finance director that we brought in, we leveraged it using the invoice discounting. So he should have looked at when that contract was up, and rather than keeping the invoice discounting going, get a consolidation loan and then pay a set interest amount over a certain period of time. Now, would that have saved us? Don't know if it would have saved us, but we would certainly have had a far better chance because we would have had longer at it. So the fact that he didn't bring that up, being a finance guy, he should have, it just meant that the interest was sucking the life right out of the business, you know. Yep. And as I say, the stress, the headaches that I had, you know, it's 400 miles from my home. You know, I was down practically every week, you know, not always at the weekends, through the week as well, you know. Yep. So as I say, being a single parent, try to get my daughter looked after and everything else and get down there to try and sort things out, you know, it's not always easy.
No.
You know?
No, and definitely, and it's absolutely no slight on you that that's happened, because there's so many business deals like that do go south without it being your fault. You know, there's obviously a lot of outside influences there that have impacted that. And what I'm sure will help you in the future is that any other deals you do in the future, you'll be better prepared for them. And everybody fails. I've had deals that haven't worked. My business partners are the same. Yeah. So it's not a slight on them. These things happen. Yeah. But yeah, as long as you learn from it, that's the main thing, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. As I say, there's lots of lessons to be learned, you know. As I say, if I was to do it again, I'd need to make sure that the processes, systems and controls were tip-top, you know, and optimised at all times, you know, because we did have some staff turnover, you know, and some processes were getting missed along the way, you know. Yep. And with buying the business and trying to understand how it's been for all these years and how it actually works and everything else, you know, it's getting your head round every single thing. Nobody can ever achieve that, because the person that set it up and has owned it for many years had it all set up that way, and he had a settled staff members. So it made it easy for them, you know.
Well, they've built all the systems along the way, so they know every nook and cranny of that business. And that's going back to what I was kind of alluding to at the beginning, when even a £7 million business, technically speaking, it's a small business. And whilst it's doing a lot of money and stuff, it is only a few degrees away from being in bother. That's the same for most businesses, most people listening to this that have got a business. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so you've mentioned this already a few times, and I'll get onto this now. So you're still doing deals, you're still looking to do deals, you're still looking to acquire businesses. Before we get on to what you're doing with the Founders Lounge and stuff like that, what type of deals are you looking for going forward?
Well, transport deals, but as I says, I won't look at anything under 5 million turnover. You know, it's just too small. You know, if you want to do it, you do it right. You need to be looking at between the 5 and the 10 million. You know, 10 million and upwards is a different kettle of fish, because if they're no longer classed as a small or a medium enterprise, or actually classed as a large enterprise, they're looking for higher multiples of EBITDA when they're getting bought out. So yeah, probably about between the 5 and the 10 million, you know, and the profit's got to be sort of decent as well.
Yep.
Because you've got to factor in the macro environment, which is the global environment, you know.
Totally.
I never even thought of Russian attacking Ukraine was going to cause the fuel prices to go up by 50 pence a litre. How can you mitigate for that risk? You know, when you're doing due diligence, you're focusing on what's in front of you, you know, what you've been given, and making sure that all maps out. But you're not sitting there thinking, you know what, if that happens, then this is going to cause this, and it's going to cause that.
Has a ripple effect, doesn't it?
It was just a chain reaction, you know. And once it starts, you can never stop it.
Totally. Well, it's one of the things we've been quite deliberate about at Monopoly, is trying to mitigate risk on the way in, because a lot of these businesses we work with, and it mostly sub 5 million, they don't have systems and processes in place, and a lot of them think they need cash to grow, but it's usually not the case. It's actually expertise, because you can give them cash, but if they've not got the systems and processes to manage that cash, it just seeps away and disappears, and then they're left with the same problem they had before. Cash is essential for a business to run, obviously, but an actual investment of cash is only necessary when they've got the systems and processes in place. So speaking from experience, when we do a deal, we assess the business in its own right, and everyone's different, but it's mitigating our risk on the way in, because if we invest capital into something that is not systemised and processed, it's basically throwing money away, because they don't have the discipline necessarily to manage that cash investment. So we try and mitigate it in a different way. Sometimes it's actually not investing cash at all. That's one of the things we do for certain types of businesses, because they just don't know how to manage that cash.
Yeah.
Okay, so skipping forward to now, because I know you've been a busy boy going to university and stuff, which must have been interesting to start up. What kind of made you go into that?
Well, I was, as I says, from February up until the beginning of September, I was paying for courses out of my credit cards and everything, getting myself maxed out almost. And then I just thought, you know what, I need more understanding, a deeper understanding, and I'll only get that on by hands-on experience. So it was actually my friend's wife turned around, she says to me, she says, well, you know what? She says, you've been like a bit of a recluse lately, you know, you've not been out and you've not been sort of socialising. She says, you need to get that, you know. She's a psychology student.
Oh, okay.
So she's in her 4th year, and she says to me, she says, what about going to university? And I says, I didn't really like school. She says, it's no school. You know, she says, far different. She says, you'd be getting yourself up, you'd have a purpose to go to, and you'd be in amongst other people. She says, which is very, very important. It's very, very important for a human to actually be able to socialise, you know.
Social creatures, aren't they?
Social creatures of habit as well, you know. So I was getting in the habit of, I wasn't going out, you know, I wasn't seeing my friends, you know, I probably wasn't the person I was, you know. As I says, a lot of stuff going on. As I says, the finance company that actually gave me the money for the acquisition, as I says, on my birthday, I got a message out of the blue, a private message on LinkedIn, and it just sort of, it cheered me up, because I beat myself up.
Yep.
No, I don't need anybody else to beat me up. No, I mean, I beat myself up when things go wrong in life. And he sort of says, look, you failed once. What have you learned from it?
Doesn't define you, does it?
No, it doesn't define. It doesn't define you as a person just now, and it doesn't define the rest of your journey. You know. So he says to me, he says, look, he says, I've seen it 101 times. He says, we deal with this all the time. He says, failure is just another key towards success. Know what I mean? If you take the lessons that you've learned through this whole process, he says, you'll get funding for another business, you know.
Yep.
So you can give it another go. He says, it doesn't define you as a person. He says, and we certainly wouldn't think twice about funding you again. Yep. you know, so that sort of perked me up, you know. But as I says, speaking to Charlie, now Charlie and I met about 5 years ago, and we became really good friends. We've been over to...
Can I ask, is it Charlie Norton?
No.
No, okay.
No.
I've been talking to Charlie online a wee bit, sorry.
Aye. No, I know Charlie Norton as
Right.
well. No, Charlie Fadden.
Right.
So Charlie's the chairman of the British Computer Society.
Okay.
He's got his own businesses as well. He's founded his own businesses and ran multi-million-pound businesses. So Charlie and I have been really good friends. You know, we probably talk to one another more than we talk to our actual families.
Yep.
Know what I mean?
Know that feeling.
And Charlie's skill set is very good with tech, you know. So Charlie and I just sat and thought, what can we do to help other people on a larger scale, you know? And that's when we came up with the idea of founderslounge.club.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so we've, as I say, we've got hundreds, if not thousands, of how-to videos on everything.
Amazing.
You know, from marketing, social media, business intelligence, you know, your Google Analytics, everything is there. You know, so as you say, starting a business is daunting because you need to be the CEO, you need to be the strategy officer, you need to be the technical officer, you need to be the marketing officer.
You need to make the coffee as well.
You've got all these hats on, you know, and nobody starting a business knows everything, you know.
Definitely not.
So we just thought, how can we help loads of people? So we've set up an online platform from our Google Drives. So we've got all the information that we need, that anybody running a business will ever need. We've put it there. We looked at other people, as I said, we've been on all these courses, so it's just looking at their business model and emulating their business model. You know, so we're not changing anything. We're practically copying and pasting everything that we've seen from your Grant Cardonis to your John Assaraf to your Dealmakers Academy to Success Resources,
yep.
You know, and we've made that process now. So
to try and bring it all into one place.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we were happy that the British Computer Society collaborated with us on having our lunch event last week.
I was down in London, wasn't it?
Yeah.
How'd that go?
That was amazing.
Good.
It was amazing. And the building that the British Computer Society is in is amazing as well, in the middle of Moorgate in London, you know. So, as I said, it's a chartered institute for information technology.
Yeah, so the stuff that's on there is high standard. It's from tried and tested programs and courses that have actually, they're specialised in a certain thing, but you've brought it all into one place.
Yeah.
Would you say that's for a starting, a entrepreneur, or is it for somebody that's already existing in business? Both?
Well, it's aimed at both.
Right.
You know, so it's aimed at people that have got the idea and they don't know how to go about it, because we've also got the link in. You said it was £30 to start a business. Well, it's actually $14.99 with Tide.
Aye, right. That's right, they do it.
We've got the link on our private Facebook page for the members.
Okay.
We've also teamed up, we're partnering with Grantify as well.
Okay.
So, yeah, so we're looking at people from solopreneurs to wantrepreneurs to people actually in business. So the next event we're looking to have, well, that was unlock your digital tech startup potential. That was the highlight for that. The next one we're looking to have at the Shard in London. You know, so we're always looking at how we can get better.
So you're looking to build that community. So that's one thing you're looking at, as well as the deals still. So is that kind of what you're going to focus on going forward?
Yeah.
Pass on your experience and whatnot.
Yeah, definitely. As I say, if we can help one person, then that's helped us.
Yeah.
You know, because we're passionate about helping people, you know.
Aye, it comes back down to that, isn't it? It's if you have that idea of helping other people, you'll help yourself anyway, just by a byproduct. You know, if you just, this notion of being self-made is not necessarily true, because if you become successful, make a bit of money, have good businesses, you have people around you that help you do that. You might be the driving force in that, but you've got people around you that actually build you up. So no, that's good to hear, mate. If you're going into it with that type of idea in the first place, that's that's perfect for the people coming on your course.
Yeah. Well, as I says, we also looked at everybody else, and everybody else is wanting like their fees up front, you know. And we just thought, we're not going to tie anybody into a contract, you know. It's £20 a month, you know. It's less than the price of a Costa coffee a week.
Yep, good
you know
price
what
point.
I mean? And we're giving them all this value that they can work on their own, or we're also bringing in speaker and trainers that will offer like their own courses where they'll actually
more specialist stuff.
Take you by the hand, show you this is what you need to do.
Yep.
Know what I mean, to get you where you want to go to.
Good.
You know, so we're not just leaving people to swing by themselves. You know, we're trying to build a community online for them where everybody can interact and talk with one another. But we're also going to run live events where they can actually pull up maybe, like say Laura Burton, she joined us last Friday. I've been on a few of Laura's webinars. I've been following her quite closely on LinkedIn for the last 18 months now. Laura's just grown her following exponentially over the last wee while, you know. And also she's got about 3 other businesses.
Yeah,
you know,
at the same time as post on LinkedIn every day,
yeah.
she's actually doing business.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a key one that I'll always look for. If someone's posting online, what's behind them? You know, what have you actually got behind that? Is there any substance behind that? So that's good to hear.
Yeah. Well, as I said, I only know her from LinkedIn and from the sales and marketing and being on a couple of her webinars or trainings. But it wasn't until she actually spoke at our event that I found out that she's actually investing in fintech and getting them to the market.
Yep.
Her husband has also got male skincare creams and stuff, you know, and then
I need plenty of that, to be fair, as much as I can get.
Me too. But they've got things in the background that they're also working on. So yeah, I really appreciate that the three of them taking their time out of their busy schedules. As I says, we had Cunley Olligan, who's the owner of the K90 YouTube channel, and he's in project management. He works with the likes of your JP Morgans, your Lloyd's banking groups and all these people. So he was talking about what they do and how they've got to work so that they stay clear of the Financial Conduct Authority, the Prudential Regulation Authority, and keep all the anti-money laundering stuff, you know.
Good.
Andy Iam, he's worked with Tesco's and stuff like that.
So pretty senior people with a lot of credibility.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. So that was just a launch, you know. But
you just started it, so where's it going to go? Yeah.
We've just started, as I say. I've reached out to another contact of mine who's got probably double the following that the three speakers had combined.
Yeah.
Know what I mean? And trying to get her to come in and give an hour's masterclass in what she does. So yeah, as I say, things are moving. Things are moving pretty fast. And then to throw things into the mix, myself and 4 others at the university have founded the Marketing Society as well.
Right.
In which we're looking to hold events, we're looking to get industry leaders in, possible employers, you know, to mingle with the sort of students doing their degrees and stuff. You know, we're looking to help people, you know, and that's my focus, you know, help as many people as I can, you know. Because
money follows that, you know, money and success follows that when you have that ambition to begin with. Brilliant. So Phil, we'll begin to wrap up now, mate. So I think the audience will have got a lot of value from this because they've seen that you didn't just jump straight into business. You weren't handed anything. You had to learn
from the ground up.
In the corporate world as well, and big companies. You've seen how they work, and then you decided, kind of mid-30s, wasn't it, to jump in and start in business. You've learned the hard way by starting your own businesses, and then obviously the lessons from doing acquisitions. People out there might think that they are easy, and they can be easy acquisitions, but you've got to have the right systems and people around you to make them work. And obviously, doing anything again, you know what you would do differently this time. And now your new venture as well is pretty exciting. So if anyone wants to get in touch with you, and whether it's through the Founders Lounge or the Marketing Club, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Probably visit me on LinkedIn, because that's, although I've got a Facebook and stuff, I've not got the time to keep updating 101 different things, you know. So founderslounge.club has got a LinkedIn page. It's also got an Instagram page, which Charlie looks after, or my own personal page, you know. As I says, people see things backwards and forwards for me anyway, you know. As I says, I posted today about not only my daughter winning a medal, but also about the guest lecture that we had yesterday from Scottish Action for Mental Health.
Yep.
And when she was talking, you know, I know 4 men that took their own lives in the last decade, you know, and life shouldn't really be that hard for people. But unfortunately, it's no me, you know. I don't know what drives people that way, you know. Life's tough for everybody, you know. As I say, that happened at the beginning of the year for me, and you know, sometimes your head goes down, you know. But I was lucky enough to have friends, family, and a network round about me to put their arm round me and say, look, things happen in life. No, I mean, dust yourself down and get on with it.
Go again.
You know.
Good.
And as I says, take action. Whatever anybody does, you just need to take action, you know.
Awesome.
Push on.
Perfect. Well, Phil, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll get all your contact details and stuff in the show notes, but it's a pleasure, mate. Thanks very much for joining me today.
Right. Thanks for having us.
No problem.
I appreciate it.
Thank you, mate.
Right, thanks.